For a long time, I felt like they were kind of upset about not looking like us. And so I feel like we've really tried very purposefully over the years to be like, your skin color is beautiful and this is the way God made you. And it's amazing. And so I feel like now, like when Platini says something, I'm like, one of my goals is like that you're like a proud black man. Like you're just, and I feel like he is.
Yeah.
When
It's
I say
just like-
pendulum swing, he goes from like, saying like, oh, I want Michael Jackson's skin.
Yeah.
Like that it fades. And that's one extreme. But now he's on the other extreme where he's like, I'm beautiful chocolate.
Yes.
And he'll tell his teacher's Caucasian, and he'll be like, he'll have a piece of chocolate and he's like, if you put it on my skin, you won't even tell. Because he's like so chocolate. And I mean,
I love it.
and on one level,
already.
I'm not sure that's, and on another level, I'm like, I'm so glad that he's on one extreme. If he's going to be on an extreme.
Yeah.
So he was at basketball practice. Is it okay if I tell this one?
Yes.
He's at back to basketball practice. He was probably where the tension is for me at the moment. So his basketball team, there's Platini, who's still really dark compared to the average American black man. He's still very dark. And then there's another boy named Miles. And so he's kind of light-skinned black. And then the rest of the team is pale. They're white. So he comes in, and they're going to do shirts and skins. Well, Platini comes in, and that Miles' dad, he's bigger than me, black man. And so we hadn't quite met yet. And Platini comes in, and they're playing shirts or skins. And so he lifts up his shirt. He's wearing a black shirt.
Yeah.
And he's black. So he runs into the gym. Shirts or skins, I'm black either way. Shirts or skins, I'm black either way. Okay. So
But he's proud. It's not
he's
like
so proud.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
all of a
yeah.
sudden, all his teammates are laughing. He runs up to the coach. He is just like, they're getting it. And he's a jokester anyway. So he's joking about it. He's like, and they're all laughing, having a good old time. Well, as a white dad, it's just me and Miles's dad sitting on the side, and I immediately feel myself go. And not because it's because it was done in public and I have a black dad next to me.
Sure.
And I immediately, my thought was, I hope he's okay with that. Am I doing it right?
Yeah.
Because I haven't met this guy, and like if he knows me, he could have the backstory.
Yeah.
Okay.
And know that like this is how we've kind of tried to navigate. And I'm like, I love that he loves his skin now.
Yeah.
Because we've gone from one extreme to the other. On another level, I'm like, I hope he's not offended by like I'm doing it wrong. And
Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I wasn't upset like at his judgment of it. I became very concerned and aware. Now, I went up afterwards and we talked and we got to know each other and, talked, and he does some foster care. And so we actually have a ton in common.
Yeah.
And they're a great family. I found out they go to our same church. They actually have 3 new foster kids that are white. And so we share a lot of the like dynamics. We're starting to get to know each other. But that was probably, and again, that's more internal. I'm sure he was totally unaware. But internally, I just felt myself go...
Well, let me even say this. Growing up in black community, skin color is a thing. Like we will judge one another inside of our own community based upon our own skin color. So for instance, like I'm light skinned, like I'm very light skinned.
Yeah.
And so growing up, I would be called the white boy. Troy's not black, he's light skinned. And there's even jokes, dark skin versus light skin. And as a kid growing up, you're very conscious of like your skin color.
Yeah.
And I even know growing up at one time, it was like the black community has gone through different phases, and you have to help me with this. So like during the 80s, like dark skin was in, like Wesley Snipes was like one of the leading actors at the time and stuff like that. Eddie Murphy blew up real big with Coming to America and all of his movies and stuff like that. And then like you move into the 90s, then you have like the Shamar Moores, and then who's not really a actor per se, but he's a model who is light skinned. And so then you have all the R&B groups where guys are majority light skinned and stuff like that, and people start flocking. So then there was like a war in between light and dark. And on both ends, you know, there would be black people who would be ashamed of their very own skin complexion, like during these times. And now we make jokes about it and stuff like that. Of course, you know, there's always going to be that Twitter meme or that, you know, that Instagram photo or something like that. So to hear that your child is actually like gravitating towards his own skin complexion and is not ashamed, that's pretty awesome.
Cool.
I've had a chance to see your children interact with you and interact with each other. And the most comforting thing to me is to see how seamlessly it happens. So even though he says these things, I can definitely tell he's like, but this is my mom and this is my dad. And there's no question about it. It doesn't seem awkward. I've seen him run up. I've seen you actually be like, what now? and I look at it and he's like, I just want to show you, you know, whatever. And the way your family blends and the way you guys, just the cohesiveness that at least we see, I think is amazing. So I don't know what any of your children may think internally or may be dealing with internally, but I definitely can see that they feel loved and they're not missing out on anything. So kudos to you guys.
Yeah, kudos to you guys.
And I think that's the biggest thing too with that, like, because you mentioned like how they are internalizing things. I think that's the biggest, because I asked Larissa recently, since she's like 23. Because
so Larissa, just a reminder, she's our oldest. From Brazil.
Okay.
And I saw a mom, an adoptive mom, post a blog about like why she hates the term adoption rocks. And again, like I've never thought about that before. Like why would you not like that? And you know, because we're like, you know, pro adoption because it brought us all together. And then I'm like, the point is that we're not really thinking about the child's story and how they feel about it. And it's making it more about us as the parents.
And the deed of I'm adopting you.
Yes.
Okay.
And
I got
so
you.
I texted Larissa and I was like, you're not going to hurt my feelings, but how does this statement make you feel? Like, and she said, honestly, it's, I don't know if she made a super big deal about the statement, but she was like, when I tell people that don't know us that I'm adopted and that I have 5 siblings who are also adopted, she said people always make the comment like, wow, your parents are amazing. And she said internally she's going, well, what about me and all I've lost to get to that point, you know, to have to be in our family.
And she's lost a lot.
She's lost a whole lot. And so she said, but I know like that's not something I'm going to say to that person. So I'm just like, yeah, they're great. You know, so I think there's like a really hard balance being an adoptive parent, because us having these kids means a lot of loss in a lot of areas. It means birth mom loss. It means, on some level, rejection that they may or may not have to deal with one day, depending on how they process things. You know, for Shadrach and Platini, a culture that they're probably not going to remember a whole lot about, and like that disconnect and like who they are and their identity. And so, you know, there's all those things that go into it. So, but I would think what you said, just that they are loved and that we have a really strong attachment as a family, is only going to be like a helpful thing as they have to walk out the things that they have lost in their lives. So you know, I think we just have to like hold it not personally in those tough conversations, you know, maybe when kids want to grow up and be involved in birth families, and to be like, you know, whatever you feel like you need to do, you know, that we support you and, you know, all that. So
yeah,
awesome.
I think adoption's one of those things. It's like, especially as Christians, it's like this wonderful thing because God adopts us and all this stuff. I think when you walk out adoption, you realize like someone had to lose on the day you you get to become their parents, someone had to give something up.
Right.
And so it's not, obviously as a couple who's never had biological kids, and I know there's all these other things, so I can't really speak fully into that, but any adoption required severe loss.
Mm-hmm. And as an adoptive parent, you kind of feel like you're always having to share.
Yeah.
And that's been a hard road for me to share
with someone. Like your child has different genetics, and you're going to have to, you can make it super normal, but they have a biological family.
Yeah.
They have a past. They have.
Yeah. And like we've included biological family in birthdays before. And I think one year in particular, Ashlyn's birth mom like shared Ashlyn's birthday pictures before I even got a chance to. But it's like holding those things loosely, because it's like in that moment, I'm like, I'm mad. She's my daughter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and so I think I went through a phase where I was like, I just feel like I always have to share them. Like there's always a piece of them that belongs to somebody else.
Yeah.
And having to not hold that so tightly and it be so personal. I feel like there's a lot of things I've had to let go of feeling super personal. And I don't think you have to do it in the same way as a biological parent compared to adoptive, because if you have a biological child, you're probably not having to visit another mother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but in that specific way of adoption, like you kind of feel like you're always having to share, I guess. So,
go ahead.
I was gonna say,
You got a question?
I don't know where you're going to your question. They stopped at Platini and
oh yeah, you go through the line. Yeah.
Oh wow, that was a while ago.
I was like, there's
Do you want me to do a top to bottom
that was
recap?
That was a good little
Yeah.
there's a
Top to bottom recap?
Big.
Yeah, top to bottom recap.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so age-wise, we have Larissa, originally born in Brazil. She's 23 now. Thaxton is 12, born here. Ashlyn is 12, born here. Platini and Shadrach. Platini is 11. Shadrach's 9, both born in Congo. And then we have Raylan, who just turned 3.
And she
She
is
is born here.
adorable. Let me say
And she
real
is
quick,
spunky.
Those when you have her there's a picture of her in the little pigtails, and if you ever seen like the little Dr. Seuss character,
Yes, Cindy Lou Who.
yes. Oh my gosh, every time, and her cheeks and stuff.
Oh, I know.
She's so adorable.
And she got massive vocabulary.
Oh my goodness.
At 3 years old.
Oh yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
and then when you have that many older siblings,
Yeah.
she's like mentally really fast with words
yeah.
and dialogue. But
Yeah.
then when you have that many older siblings, it's like,
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Like
my
we're like,
goodness.
Raylan, stop calling Ashlyn a butt cheek. You make she goes. And we're like, a van's pretty big, but we make it feel small. She's like beside Ashlyn. Ashlyn's like, cut it out. And Rand's like, you make me so mad. You're a butt cheek. And I'm like,
you just turned 3. She was very clear.
or like Judson
very-
told her she was in trouble one day, and he's like, you cut it out. It is not funny. She's like, actually, it is funny. And that was before she was 3, well before she was
That was
3.
like 2.5.
And so then she
What?
came downstairs the other day because she's not supposed to get out of bed after bedtime, but she always makes an excuse. There's some reason every single night
It's
that
always
she.
logical too.
Yes.
I mean, it
Yeah.
makes sense,
So we're like,
but-
you can't get up. And so she comes downstairs and she's like, so I was in my room and I was like, and this is what she says. And I was like, I'll just come downstairs. And she does her face all like, and so then I came downstairs.
That's her
can't.
logic.
Oh yeah. Or she's like, I ran out of milk. I need more milk. Or then one time I got really mad because it was like the 3rd time she had gotten out of bed. I was like, Raylan. And I got really upset her. She's like, well, I pooped. I was like, what? The one time.
So it's funny, to go back, you mentioned that she doesn't want to be potty trained, and hearing her thought process, it sounds like there's a very logical reason
There
to
is.
her
Yeah.
why
She's
that's
convinced
not.
she doesn't need it.
She said it's too hard and she doesn't know how to do it. And I was like, well, I'll get you an Ariel doll. And she's like, and then she just moves on. And then she'll tell me like, well, princesses are not potty trained. Like, they are, I assure you.
They do not poop in their dresses.
So
So we talk. All right. and Raylan's the last one, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we talked about the dynamic with you all, the parents to the children.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's the dynamic with the kids with one another?
Oh, that is funny.
That is complicated. Probably the best way to describe it is some of it's based off of personality. Some of it's based off of their past. So like Shadrach and Platini are very bonded, and Shadrach depends on Platini for a lot of things. Ashlyn and Raylan are super connected because their age gap. So 12 to just turned 3 is actually about 10 years. Is that older sibling's a helper like right away?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And they share a room. And Ashlyn also was praying with Megan for a baby. So
She's like, I wanted a baby sister, but we got 2 boys.
Wow.
So
There's still a chance.
So Ashlyn's super connected with
Yeah.
Raylan.
Yeah.
She's still a sister, so she's not really a mom. But sometimes she thinks she is.
Yeah.
And probably some of the more complicated ones are like Thaxton and Platini. It's like there's a lot of teasing. There's a lot of brotherly type stuff, but there's not the history of trust. And so that's where it gets a little funky between the kids.
Yeah.
Because it's like there can be teasing, but things escalate super fast. Where like me and my brother, we shared a room, 1.5 years apart. We'd fight every day, but every morning we woke up best friends.
Yeah.
It's like, but we had a lot of trust between us.
Yeah.
Well, in Thaxton, we learned he had in his mind that everything changed when Shadrach
He's
and
not good
Platini
with
came.
change.
That it removed something that, like, he wanted to go back to just the 4 of us, like me and
before Larissa.
before Larissa. But what he didn't realize, and I didn't say this to him, but he was having a lot of hard time. I'm like, bud, you've got to do a little bit better. But there was really only like a few years in their life before Larissa came. And then she was there for the next 5 years. And then it was only 11 months before Shadrach and Platini came. So it's never been very long, just the 4 of them, the 4 of us. So I think he just felt sort of like they interrupted something that really never existed for that long. But in his mind, I think, and it could have been just like Larissa moving out of the house and kind of like, I think we started doing just more things purposefully with them because it was just 4 of us.
Yeah.
That I think maybe that kind of got implanted in his head as like, oh, I like this or whatever. So I think that's been partially his problem, that it was such a big change, and it really was. I mean, you have 2 kids come in that don't even speak your language, and they just, I guess I kind of describe when older kids come in, it's like filling a bucket with a hole in it. Like everything you feel like you can do, you're like, oh my word. It was hard to sit down and have a meal because they just wanted our attention all the time. And you really need to give it, especially there at first for a while, because you have to form those really strong attachments where they like know you will be there, you're dependable, like you're trustworthy. Like that trust is huge.
Right.
So we had to do that. And I think we made purposeful efforts with Thax and Ashlyn at night when the other 2 went to bed to spend some quality time as they were transitioning with all this too. But I think that's made his time more difficult with Platini, and Platini has always been a very independent person. Like, and we had to teach him to need us really, because he was kind of like we would he's like, you don't need to carry me, and you're like, all my kids are my babies, and he's like,
I
no,
literally would have to say that to him every day.
and now
Like,
guess who
you're my
rides up on
baby.
his back every single night up the stairs?
Yeah. So I still
Come
carry
get me, Dad.
I still carry Shadrach and Platini to
Every
bed,
night to
just as
bed.
a habit of like. But it took a long time, even with Platini, to be
Yeah.
like, "You're my baby," and he's like, "I'm not your baby." I'm like,
Yeah.
everyone, and I could point to Larissa, who's significantly older,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
19. Well, she's technically still my baby, just to help define
Well, and then
things. but-
Thaxton loved Shadrach when he first came because he
looked like a
5,
baby.
but he looked 3, and he would try to hold Shadrach, and like, I mean, he just was crazy about him. But as soon as Shadrach grew, he's like, Shadrach's a full grown boy. And
that stopped.
so that's, but that was really good for them. He doesn't have issues with Shadrach. It's more just like normal teasy brother stuff, but nothing mean. And then Ashlyn, has really good relationship with Shadrach and Platini and Raylan and Thaxton. Actually, we call her the glue.
Yeah.
Like we will literally be at the beach and Ashlyn comes. She's like, I think I'm going to go to the pool. Because we go to Outer Banks, so it's like pool beach of like
Outer
a
Banks
beach.
is our place to go to. Yeah,
We get like this great house and like have our own
Split
pool.
it with her
So she's
parents.
like, I'm gonna go up to the pool. All of a sudden, you see the boys start to look around, and they're like, they're looking for Ashlyn, and one by one, each one of them will leave and go find her.
Oh wow.
She is the glue. It is the
She
weirdest thing because
is.
they love to play with her, and she's really nice.
She can play with all her
Yeah.
siblings.
Wow.
And then she was the one who taught, because I feel like sometimes maybe kids that have been in certain orphanages have a hard time like playing. You know, they don't really have the stuff to play with or like are taught to play with through playing with her parents, you know. And so they didn't really know how to do that. Like they didn't play the first 2 months they were here with Ashlyn and Thaxton at all. Like never. I think it took 2 months and we were like, oh, they're downstairs playing. And it was like 20 minutes, and which was a huge deal. So Ashlyn was the one that taught them how to play Barbies. And so I mean, elaborate Barbie play where they'd set up a camcorder and make movies and
Oh, wow.
like, but that she was the one who taught them how to play. And so like they, you know, would have the mom and the dad, and they still play Barbies together.
wow.
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
So, and then
Platini
Raylan's
probably doesn't want to say that.
Platini doesn't want to say he plays Barbies, but
Platini, when
they
you
make-
get older and
they
you
make
get a
Barbie-
Facebook page and you see this,
yeah, I know. I'm so careful about what I post.
They make Barbie movies.
Yes.
They do.
Oh, we watch those.
They're figurines.
And then everybody loves Raylan. So Raylan's thing right now is she's like, because I let her one time, which led to many more times, of laying in the bed with Shadrach and Platini before she has to go to bed for their bedtime. And they can all like watch a movie for a little while together and then go to bed. So she'll be like, can I do that thing where I like hang out with Shadrach and Platini? And I'm like, okay. Yay, thank you, mommy. Thank you, mommy. And she'll get up and she'll snuggle in bed with Shadrach, and then Platini's like, come down here with me. And she's like, okay. And then she goes and snuggles with him in bed. And so
Yeah.
she's just kind of like everybody's little, I don't know, they love her. So plus she's the baby.
so your dynamic with the kids, their dynamic with each other. What about you all's extended family? How do they interact with the kids?
I think it's been pretty seamless. I keep scooching away from my mic.
Yeah, so Megan's parents live in town. They have all the kids right now.
Right now.
Thank you.
It's
parents.
been quite an adventure
We'll
for
try
them.
to wrap it up. I know we've
Yeah.
been going at this for a
Parents.
minute. We'll try to relieve the parents in
Yeah.
just a second.
Yeah, so they've been great. Every time adoptions come up, we've talked with them. There's been dynamic struggles with each adoption, but they've been on board for each one.
Yeah.
And
They are like the babysitters. Like they're the reason that
Yes.
we can both serve on the worship team. They've babysat almost every single Wednesday night since Ashlyn and Thaxton were infants.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yes. So for the past 12 years,
So
they've been
Nanny-
babysitting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Are we going to Nanny and Papa's? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
They're super excited.
Yeah.
My parents, probably, they're awesome when they come into town. They're good parents if you're going to have to live across the country from grandparents. They're good because they like pack it in.
They're very super intentional.
Super.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
My mom's
Yeah.
like on the floor playing like Uno and like all this stuff. Probably for them, it's just been more of like adoption's a newer category.
For
when
your
we
parents?
first started.
And
yeah.
my family, I have like a few adopted cousins. So
Oh,
it was
really?
never really like a new concept to me.
Wasn't totally
I didn't,
foreign.
yeah, I didn't really see it as, I didn't see my cousins as all of us different from each other in any way. So
Yeah.
Yeah, we have play cousins, extended family.
yeah.
And so, for me, I think it wouldn't be so awkward either. Like you said,
Yeah.
we never use the term step or adopted or
Gotcha.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
this is my cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter that there's no blood relation whatsoever.
Right,
It's like,
right.
this is
Right.
my,
Right. And you don't really think of it any different.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can see that.
So luckily, I like my in-laws.
And
You marry
they
a
love
family,
you.
for sure. You marry a
Yes,
family.
You do.
Has it been hard?
Oh yeah.
Adoption?
Yeah.
Yeah, very.
Definitely like the hardest thing we've ever done for sure.
What has kept you through the hard times?
Whew. What are you going to say?
Yeah, I think probably some of the things, we're of the opinion that's a little different than maybe at least the Christian world, that like everyone should adopt. If everyone adopts, then there won't be any kids in foster care. And if you want me to say it bluntly, if everyone adopted, I think we'd increase the divorce rate.
Wow.
Partially because each child is so different and comes with so many different dynamics. To make a blanket statement that everyone should just adopt, I think is ignoring the fact that kids put a strain on a marriage. But then when you do adoption and you have to walk out legal stuff and you have to walk out past stuff, and then there's obviously skin color differences.
It is really, really emotional.
I mean, you have to quadruple your communication. I mean, you got to find spaces to like talk about everything and figure out how to like
we go on our trip once a year, just the two of us, just to make sure like, hey, one day when our focus is not raising these kids, like we have to make sure that we still like have a blast hanging out together. And
at least
fun.
like each other.
Yeah. No. Our first podcast was on like versus love.
Yeah.
And the importance of liking one another.
I was like, I still want to be best friends, and keep that. So.
I cut you off, babe. What were you gonna say?
No, he's good. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's just so many extra stresses. Like, is a birth mom going to change her mind? Is court going to work? Is it not going to work? And how do you interact with a birth mom that's still in the area? How do you navigate kids who don't even speak English and they wake up? Like, it's hard to stay happy every single day.
Yeah.
When Shadrach and Platini first came, they'd wake up by coming to my side, yelling "Dad" real loud and go, "I'm up." In their French accent. Dad, I'm up. And then they'd
It's like 5 in the morning.
They'd stretch and whack me between the legs.
Oh, are you serious?
And that's Platini. Shadrach would come to my side of the bed, and here is my face, and he's like,
So
he just stands there.
When you open your eyes, you're like,
And I was like, oh, God. Can you, like, say something, please?
So, I mean, and those are obviously... They're funny. It wasn't funny at the time
funny
because it was
now.
like a year of like, that's how I woke up every morning.
Yeah.
And it's you have kids that are endless buckets of needing attention.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, oh, these things aren't changing. Like they learned English fast, but this isn't changing. Or we've been investing in this one kid who's new in our family. And when we go out on a date, there's like issues with the babysitter, or if they're old enough to send messages, they're self-harm messages all the entire time. Or so I think that's probably one of the things that, give an example is like have a rebellious teenager and that puts a strain on a marriage, but then have that tension all the time. And I think that's really what pulls on a marriage.
Yeah.
It's like it's hard for a couple to figure out, are we going to be on the same page to discipline?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hard conversation.
And I think for sure, like when you're talking about adoption too, like I think as far as like asking like what's kept us is being 100% sure like this is what God called us to.
Yeah.
And feeling, and that's why I said like Ashton and Thaxton's adoptions were different than the rest with the purpose that I felt like something shifted in us in having a broader perspective of like, what can we do to be a part and respond to who God is and what he wants us to do and be obedient and hearing that. So, I think just remembering that like sometimes like your mission field is outside of your home. And I think for us, we feel like it's very much inside of our home. Like why take these kids in to, not be super intentional and everything. Like it was very purposeful, so, I think it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm sure this is what God called us to do, for sure.
And then I think embracing that we're different.
Yeah.
Like family is different.
Yeah.
Our dynamics are different. We have to talk about like birth moms and find creative ways. You came out of another lady's belly and make that super normal.
Like Ashlyn asked me the other day, like, when are you telling Raylan she's adopted? And I'm like, well, Ashlyn, I don't really like, I've already told her. So, because we start it really early. I never wanted to be like one of my kids to assume for like 5 years, just out of assumption, not me lying to them, that they came for me and be like, oh, hey, guess what? Like, I want it to be a part of their vocabulary and part of something that's like, we're communicating about this, just like you would communicate with a birth child. Like, you were in mommy's tummy. And, you know, I would do that with a birth child, just reminiscing or whatever. And so I'll talk to Raylan, I'm changing her diaper, and like, Raylan, do you remember whose belly you came from? And she's like, yes, Miss So-and-so. And then she's like, actually, I came from Nanny's belly. That's what she'll say to me.
She starts joking.
Yes, but I want it to be a part of something where I don't just like sit them down one day and say, oh, you're adopted, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think you are always kind of evaluating some of their past and trying to keep the global perspective of like, are they doing well for them? Because each of them has a different story. So, and then at least having enough open conversation where she's like, yeah, you're being really snippy with Shadrach, or you're being really snippy with Thaxton, or we flip-flop a little bit.
Yeah.
I usually don't bring it up as much because I'm like, finally, you're being a little snippy with that one. But you know,
he's like, now I feel like we're on the same page.
Now we're on the same page. But, you know, hey, remember, we committed to sticking this out. We're going to be in it for the long haul. You're feeling this way. And so I know.
But I think one thing that's been really important, like for us in our marriage, is being okay with hearing the emotive part of it. Like, he has always been okay with, like, before I was totally freaked out of bringing Shadrach and Platini home. I'm like, what if they've experienced terrible things? And what if, you know, they do something to one of the other kids because that's what's been done to them, and we're bringing them our home and it's permanent.
Very common.
That's a common thing. And I started having all these fears, and I'm texting him like, we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do this. And of course he's like, it's okay. Why don't we talk about it when we get home? He's never like shut me down and like, no, you know, that's not the right way to feel and blah, blah, blah. He's like, let's talk about it later together. We can have a conversation. And just being able to have like, it's a safe place to be like, this feels like crap and I'm doing a bad job. Or like sitting down at dinner and even being able to like verbalize how we wish we would have done things differently with Larissa. I wish we would have understood this and I would have done this way, and just kind of like hashing it out. So we did and have done a lot of that. So yeah.
You have a question, babe?
Did you guys ever, did you want a big family?
I think we thought, yeah, let's have a lot of kids. You said that.
Yeah.
But then once we adopted Ashlyn and Thaxton, I don't think we were like, let's have a big family.
There was a contentment at that stage.
Yeah, we were content there.
It's kind of interesting because my parents point out things in my past that I didn't connect. They went all the way back to, hey, do you remember you were, early high school, you went on a missions trip to Tijuana. We'd go all the way down, and then we went into Tijuana, and you came back and you just talked about this little boy in the orphanage. And I can still picture him. As soon as they started talking about him, I was like, I remember him. Like, I remember pushing him on the swing. He's the one who wouldn't engage. He's the one, by the end of the day, I had him on my shoulders. It was just like, and they're like, you came back just talking about him. I was like, I did? And so and they were like, yeah, I think that's when God opened the door just to this idea of like adoption.
Wow.
And I was like, I think you're right. Like, it wasn't like a conscious, like from that point on, I was like, I'm going to adopt, because we went into like trying to have biological kids. And even when God said stop, it wasn't like we were like, fine, we'll just adopt. It wasn't like this
not at all.
conscious thing. It happened when, Thaxton was born.
Yeah.
But I didn't glue that God had made these steps, and they would point out other things along the way, and I'm like, oh, I think there is this path that was grown, but it wasn't a conscious like,
we're gonna have 6 kids.
Right.
Yeah I think it was just like each stage of saying, because we did have people or one person come up to us when we had the baby stroller, like 11 months after not even 11 months. They came in April and she was born in December. So that's how long the boys were not here that long before Raylan was born. And this lady's like, is she yours? I was like, yeah, we just adopted her. She's like, did you do that on purpose? because they were so close together. And I was like,
didn't your family just
she
change?
was an unplanned adoption? Like, I guess that happens. But yeah, it was more like just as each thing came, it was like, really being like, well, I think this is a yes, and it kind of evolved into, now looking back, I'm like, I would never at this point want a small family for us. Because a lot of times it's just like you kind of feel like you bring the party wherever you go. Some days I don't want to be a part of that party and I have no choice. Like some days in the summer I get up out of bed and I'm like, wow, you guys need to take it down a notch. Yeah. But, it's like family game night is, you have a big enough family to have teams. Which is pretty fun.
That's really,
and Judson plays with no mercy, so.
Yeah, y'all can play. What's the game we play? Where we draw the cards?
The fishbowl?
Taboo.
Oh,
Taboo.
Yeah, Taboo would probably be a great name for you guys.
Yeah. We play Clue.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Some of them understand it.
And then we play Scrabble.
I don't understand Uno. Clue. They tried to play like a group Clue one time. I was like, dude, I have no idea what's going on. Uno. Are y'all into the new Unos? Or y'all play traditional Uno?
They had the standard Uno.
Yeah, but they have ones they can write on.
Yeah, and then we got Speak Out where you put the big plastic things in your mouth.
Yeah, y'all have to. Have y'all recorded yourself doing that? Y'all have to do that.
Platini picked it out.
Oh my goodness. He bought it.
So funny.
With his own money.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's hilarious.
How is that money-wise with kids? I mean, I have a bunch of kids, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, we do allowance, like, basic, and then they can do extra chores to get a little bit more.
And how do we afford to feed them?
That might be
Walmart click list.
I'm trying...
Walmart.
Please talk about it. I'm trying to get Chaka on it.
We saved so much money. Judson sat down and he told us, this is what we spent on groceries this month. We need to change something. I think that month we spent $2,000 on groceries.
Sheesh.
Wow.
For food. Not going out to eat. No.
We don't go out to eat very
Regular groceries. Regular groceries. At one point, Shadrach and Platini were going through like 3 loaves of bread in a week.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
just the 2 of them.
Yeah.
Just the 2 of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so now we are remodeling our kitchen. So we're getting like that commercial size fridge and freezer. And I was like, Daxton, we can get 6 frozen pizzas. Because right now, like we'll do click lists and sometimes do 2 pickups a week, maybe sometimes 3 a week. And that's need based. It's not just like, hey, we want to have a special. It's like, oh, we ran out. But when we did click lists, because you don't realize how much you go in to Walmart and pick things up that you don't need.
Yeah.
When you're doing the list, you really are just going, what do we need? And you stick to it because that's what you get.
And they feel like the kids feel like they have a say, but I'm like,
so like, what do you want on your list? So they get to choose still. Hey, put this on the list, Dad. And we saved $1,000
Really?
the first time. Yeah.
Because you're not dragging any kids through. You're not doing your little pickup like, oh, that looks tasty.
Yeah.
And isn't that like a big time saver?
Oh,
It is.
yes.
I make the list. We set an appointment. We drop off the kids typically on Monday for
It's like a
school,
5-minute
and
stop.
We drive and we stop there. They load it up.
It's so amazing.
It is so amazing.
And then Shadrach's like, he's like obsessed with food. And Judson will pull up. He's like, Dad's home. He's got the food. I mean, he's like out the door, like bringing in. I mean, it's the best part of his week if he can be.
Yeah.
So I think and I want Chaka to tell a story because evidently I don't tell stories about her correctly. Her hatred for Halloween, but I think one of your issues is the produce. You're concerned about them getting the wrong produce or molded or bruised.
We've never had any issue with the produce.
You know what their policy is? Any produce they have to show you, and you can accept or reject.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there.
Now, it is a learning curve learning how to order bananas on Click List. One time we got one banana.
They accidentally got one today.
I was like, why is there one banana on the table? He just did gross. Then one time we apparently ordered 3 bunches and we had 3 full Walmart bags of bananas.
Like, why do we have 18 bananas?
Wow. Okay.
Somebody has to figure out that balance.
Yeah. We're like 1 or 18. I don't know.
Click List actually super good. For
it's good.
I also, I get from my mother, I buy different things at different places. So I actually don't buy, unless I'm just running in to get something, I don't buy produce at Walmart. I buy my produce at Kroger's. Yeah. But then I go to Food Line and I buy the meat because Food Line always has the meat marked down.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Yes. And so that's another thing. And then I buy the bulk stuff at Sam's. So one day of grocery shopping for me is 4 different stores.
Yep.
But
you probably save money that way.
You can have 4 different.
And then we have.
I'm trying to tell him.
He's just
because here's the thing. I heard on this one podcast once where this husband said, when my wife, something along the lines of, I want to make life as easy as I can for you.
Oh.
And it's because the reason why he said that is because he doesn't want to see his wife stressed out. You know, because when she's stressed out and things of that nature, then everybody in the household stressed out. And so I'm like, hey, babe, you know, consider this because this will take some. You'll get time back, and you could be in more control of the things that you order and stuff like that. And I'm because I know your biggest thing is you want more time. You hate losing time. You want to make sure your time is purposefully used. And so I think a click list would be a way of doing that.
I love how a click list went into a deep conversation.
Yes.
We're like,
the whole conversation we're having before that.
You're like,
I will tell you,
That's real life.
I'm definitely the husband who's very concerned about her stress levels.
Yes.
And so we aren't the couple that has jobs. We don't divide up jobs. And I know a lot of couples do, and it works perfect for them. And maybe it's the dynamic of our family. Maybe it's partially a little bit how I grew up. But like, if laundry is behind and we need to get it done, I jump in.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Dishes,
I'm like, I can't
no
keep
one
up
has
right now.
the dishes roll. No one has the grocery pickup roll. No one has. So anytime.
He's just more like, do you want to do it or do you want me to do it? And I'm like, depending on my mood. We don't know.
But if we get, if it's like, oh, there's a lot of laundry, like, or she makes one comment about like, I'm a little behind in laundry. It's like, my brain just goes, I need to do laundry.
Yeah.
And if, oh man, dishes are behind, you know, I'm like, okay, I need to do dishes. Because it's a very tag team, obviously, with 7 people currently in the house. There's just a lot of laundry.
Yeah.
And we use paper plates and paper bowls, but there's still a lot of dishes. Lots of dishes.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of like rice and meat and stuff. So I'll just make sure like we pretty much always have rice and meat. Shadrach and Platini, they can go for like days just eating rice and meat.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's good for us too. So just kind of always keeping an eye on like, oh, I need to jump in here. I need to do that. I need to do that. Just because of the family dynamic being larger. So I think if we actually just did roles, it would be, it would add a lot of tension to us just because I'd sit back and be like, the dishes aren't done and that's her job. I'm not touching them, but I'm frustrated they're not done. And so we just have a lot of that dynamic.
I think it helps too that we don't have a huge house.
Yeah, we don't have,
like we haven't upgraded our house for our family, like size wise. It's been more like, okay, well, how can we? Because I've thought before, I'm like, man, it would be nice to have more space, but if we had more space, that's more stuff to clean.
Yeah, that is true.
So I would like, we don't hardly have any storage in our house either. So there's a lot of like Saturdays that are for Goodwill trips of cleaning out and dumpster, like so keeping things kind of like, you know.
She doesn't actually schedule them.
No,
it's
they're
when I
panic
wake
on a
up
Saturday.
on a Saturday and I'm like, oh,
He sees
something's in
my
the
eyes
air.
glaze over.
Something's in
like,
the air.
It's going down today.
I smell it. She's fixated. I guess today we're clean.
Because if stuff gets cluttered with all those people, and then I feel like things are getting cluttered, I'm like, there's too many people and too much stuff.
We're purging something.
Yeah.
I know that feeling, and there's only 2 of us, but
Yeah.
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 I do.
Before kids, our basement was unfinished.
And it was
we
totally
figured out a way to fill
Totally
it up.
full. Yeah. Don't know how we did that.
All right. One last question.
Okay.
All right.
And then it's like
Because we were
7
going
o'clock.
short today. Is that
We were
right?
gonna be short.
We were going to be
were.
short. And the question is, could you share some advice to those people who are considering adoption? What would you say to them?
Can I actually add to that? Not just your dynamic is different in general, and I don't want to say different like I don't even like that word. But the fact that literally you tried in the beginning to have children. So not just the adoptive perspective, but also for those who are looking at the same options and things, are going through the same things that you guys had to go through.
As far as like dealing with like infertility, but then also adoption. I would say well, first of all, us going through infertility together, I think as a couple, we were like kind of whatever happens, we choose each other first in this, no matter what the outcome is.
Yeah.
Because even I've heard of like some people adopting and it being such a stress, like that it really affected their marriage. If not, the marriage ended. I mean, just those are stories I've heard before. And especially thrown in with infertility, just the nature of it is really, really difficult. But I think really coming to a place that as a woman, accepting that, because I think if you walk through life feeling like you're less than, that like I'm a woman, but I can't bear children, and kind of wearing that as a, I don't know, I almost felt like I'm not a real mom, you know, like you're a real mom, because I haven't experienced that. So I think really differentiating between those two things. We're both real moms, but we've walked totally different roads, and my experience is going to be different from your experience, and not dwelling there like something that I never could have. And it's okay to like close that door.
Yeah.
Because I feel like for me, I needed to not live as if my kids that are adopted were like option B, that they are still their option A, and they were where God took us.
Yeah.
So I think that's been really important. And then I also think with the actually pursuing adoptions and things like that, are keeping an open mind how things will look as much as possible. I didn't know that we would have such a close relationship with Thaxton's birth mom and be a part of her life for the past 12 years, in and out. But to the point that when like something bad is happening, sometimes we're the first people she calls for help. And just being okay with having that relationship, and then holding things loosely too, for when your kids get older. You don't know if they're going to want to be a part of their birth family, and not feeling like threatened by it, which I think is a part of letting go too of the biological child thing. Just being able to not hold it so tightly. And 3 or 4, 5, it can be really expensive. But things that, the tree. Sorry, I shouldn't say that out loud. I was just so excited.
It's all good.
Like, yay!
I'll pan the camera. So
yeah. There's a Christmas tree right over there.
I know. But it's really cool. February. Like, with taxes and stuff, like when you adopt, you have some tax.
Yeah, I don't think most people know about that. Yeah.
Really, really good tax benefits like that roll over for the next few years. That I think with Thaxton's, it actually almost completely refunded his adoption.
Oh, wow.
We were like, whoa.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's a piece of it, but like even to get really personal, because it's like, well, how do you do an international adoption? Those are expensive. I mean, when Shadrach and Platini came home, we weren't prepared financially for them to come home, but it cost a large chunk of money just to get them from Congo to here. And we literally put it on a credit card that had no interest. To just be like, well, this is how we're going to have to do it. And then we're just going to pay it off. And then some people fundraise and do that type of, so there are ways it can't, I think sometimes there's a thought of like, oh, it's so expensive to adopt. But actually having a baby in general can be really expensive.
It's really expensive.
Depending on where you are. My sister-in-law was like, oh, it costs this much for me to give birth at this hospital. And that was with insurance, and it was a lot. And I was like, oh, wow. So I think for me, not, we might be able to easily go and be like, oh, that car cost $20,000. But we're like, well, we need a car, and that's kind of part of it. I think that's how we walked into it. Like, not comparing the kids to a car, but being like, it comes with some sacrifice, and that's part of the sacrifice. And there's no price on it, really. It's like, you know what, there's some trust that God will provide. And I really feel like no matter where we have been financially across the past 12 years, we have always had what we needed. And so that's kind of weird to look back on and be like, when we adopted Thaxton, we were not the same financially now that we were then. Yeah. You know, so I think those are just things to be prepared for. And frustrating and emotional. And I know there were times in dealing with birth moms that I was like, golly, I just don't know if I can do this, you know, anymore. It's a lot. And Judson, during one of those times, he's like, you know that you want to do this and it's going to be okay. And I'm like, I know. But it's also like really, really awesome. Hardest thing we've done, but also sit back sometimes and go, is this like really the life that we're living? Is kind of crazy. So in a good way.
Yeah, I think probably for me, probably the best way to describe it is holding it super loosely, because things can constantly change about adoption, about you know, birth moms, about cost, about all that stuff, about home studies, and you get like, you get people in your house and they want to know your background, they want to check out your house, they want to, and if you haven't been through that, I've known some people who are like, I mean, it kind of wigs them out because it's like they're all up in your business. And obviously if you get pregnant, if you're around enough, you know that like drug addicts get pregnant. They don't need no permission. But if you want to adopt, you have to go through home studies and checks and financial stuff and all this stuff. So holding it loosely, and then at the same time, like being all in and committed. So it's not like trying to find this balance between holding it loosely and being all in, loving a child. It's like you have to be 100% of both. Which is, I mean, it just brings a lot of like tension.
Yeah, I mean, really one of the conversations I had with Raylan's birth mom, because we came and visited her on the way home from the hospital and stopped by her house. And she's like a really like emotionally intuitive person. And she's like, you don't seem okay. Like, it seems like you're not okay with me holding her. And I was like, I'm scared you're going to take her away from me. And I mean, like literally having that conversation where it's like, well, she sees that I'm uncomfortable anyway. Like, I may as well just say it. But, you know, I was like, I just love her so much. And she's like, I would love to be able to take her, but she's like, I'm not going to take her away from you. I mean, these are the conversations that you're like, this stuff is not easy. So I think that's part of it too. Being all in and loving this child so much, but you still have to somehow even, you know, hold things loosely to be like, well, if this is a door that's closed, then we'll have to take that next step. So
it's like 100% trusting God that he'll work out the details. And when I say that, if you heard our story from start to finish, you would know we've said yes to 12 adoptions. Doesn't mean we'd have 12 kids because one dictated another one. Type of thing. But we've said yes to 12 and only half of them have worked out. Through, you know, I mean, there's miscarriages, there's things that happen in the foster care system, there's grandparents that step in last second. There's all these different things. So trusting God, he'll work out the details and literally kind of sitting there. But if you only do that, you can't be 100% in on loving a kid. And so you have to add in the moments, you have to be 110% committed to this child. But in the back of your head, this thing doesn't go away.
Right.
You know? And so I think that's really probably the day in, day out practice of like, how do I trust God? But how am I 110% committed to where I am in this moment? Because if you always play it this way, you know, an adoption might take a year or two, but then you haven't formed all those attachments with that kid. You've missed the first 2
Yeah.
years. You haven't actually been committed to that child, and that also bears some fruit. It's not like you can all of a sudden just like turn it on. You know, so you kind of have to navigate both, and I think that's what it looks like to trust God in the process.
Yeah, there was actually a friend of mine that was adopting internationally, and she would go visit her boys, and she's like, I'm kind of surprised at myself that and she was already a mom. She's like, I'm really surprised I'm not feeling these natural mother instincts yet. And I'm like, well, you're getting to know each other.
Yeah.
Like they're learning to love you as a mom, and you're learning to love them as their mom, and you know, them as your children. And that's like this relationship that's going to grow, you know? So I think there's things you learn about yourself too, where you're like, weird. I didn't think that would take this amount of time to do that. So
yeah. But we're at the point in life where we sit back some nights and we talk, and we're like, I didn't expect our lives to look like this.
I know.
Like, how did we get here? But it was all just a bunch of little yeses.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing to look at our family and see lots of different color and, you know, 6 kids and all these different things. But it's not like we one day like mapped it out and we're like, this is what we're going to look like.
I have one more thing before I forget. The other thing I would do, people talking about, thinking about adoption, would be really, really research attachment. Like super research that and understand. There's like a few books out. One is The Primal Wound, and it talks about how kids even adopted from birth can have just attachment issues because I guess there's some, I don't know, things where babies can have those issues just because mom and baby are sharing everything physically, that there's like this, you know,
even hormones,
like this initial
chemicals.
rejection of putting your baby in somebody else's arms.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we think we have all the influence, and we're like, well, why is my child struggling with this? I've had them since day one, you know? And there's there's a conference that comes around every year. Usually they do like a podcast at Thomas Road and stuff, and it's the Empowered to Connect conference. And they talk a lot about all of it's like parenting children from hard places and what trauma looks like and how their brains function, how the brain of a child from trauma looks different than a child who hasn't had trauma, and how you navigate that.
And we do parent different.
Yeah. And so I think really learning as much about that as you can, especially a kid that's a little older. And some of those kids aren't going to have problems like that. They're going to process differently or whatever. But some of them are. And so I think to be as educated as possible on those things is really important, because how you parent them is going to be really huge. I mean, it's like, even like, we don't punish our kids where we're like, you're in trouble, so you can't go. Usually, I think we did it one time where we didn't let one of the kids go, and I like deeply, deeply regretted it, because I was like, that felt bad on both ends. I think that was a wrong choice as a parent. But most of the time, 9 times out of 10, it's like, you keep them in the game is kind of the quote that she uses. Karen Purvis was the one who came out with all like the connected parenting stuff, and basically like their punishments aren't removing them from a family thing, because their tendency is going to be to remove themselves anyway.
Oh, wow.
Because like, you know, I'm not a part of this really. I'm not really a part of the family, you know? So different things like that. But it's kind of like, the way I've described it is, you know, most kids that have had a normal childhood were just kind of like already attached. It's not even a category. So when I first heard attachment disorder, I didn't even know what that meant. I'm like, well, what does that look like? I don't know. But it's basically like everything turned upside down. And so I think that would be really, really good, because I didn't understand that before Larissa came into our family. And I feel like it could have been really helpful for her and for us too. So, yeah.
See, we asked for one thing, y'all gave us $1 million, and I appreciate
gave you
that.
85.
I stuck to the rules. I just want to let you know.
I just feel like I had so many things to say.
You did, yeah.
I'm actually glad that you guys came on. My wife and I, we actually have been considering adoption, and well, actually, that was one of the things we said before we got married. We was like, we want to adopt when we get married. And we just went through I think we finally got our last check off on our fostering.
Well, not the last check. The agency has done all of theirs, and they cleared it, I believe. So now it goes to is it DCP or something? So the governmental one, so they can do their check and make sure we're okay. And after that, we'll be turned on.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's very, very thankful because, I mean, as much as we are doing this for people who are watching, we're really doing it for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's great. I think when you're considering it, you listen differently.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're like, oh, if this is my future, you know, you have conversations differently. And
Yeah.
I mean, we talk to adoptive parents. It's like Miles, the kid on the basketball team. His parents do foster care. If I'm there with, like, especially his mom, because she's a little more of an extrovert. I mean, we'll sit there and we'll nonstop talk, and we're just comparing stories, and we're like picking up on things, and we're laughing about random things that probably biological families wouldn't laugh at, but we're connecting things, and I'm listening in like how she's dealing with things. I'm listening as a learner. I mean, I'm a participant too, but
You're like, she have any good advice?
Yeah. Right, you pick up on those things because when you're engaged in the game,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're like, oh,
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll send you link to those connected parenting videos. It's really, really good.
Really?
Yeah. It was like a game changer for us to go to the conference. I actually think they're having it soon. Maybe.
And it's coming here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do a simulcast of it.
Yeah.
Family Life Services.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is
They
really, really
oftentimes
good.
do it on LU Thomas Road.
Like, I feel like if we wouldn't have gone, that we would have parented Shadrach and Platini totally different when they came. I mean, I was like at Walmart getting a toddler carrier for a 5-year-old because it's all like
Megan carried Shadrach.
Judson's like, just get the baby carrier. But it really, I mean, there's so much like to just things I would never think about. So
yeah.
Wow, for sure.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, Judson, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Could you close us in a word of prayer?
Absolutely.
Just so we can pray with those who are potentially considering adoption, fostering and things like that. And can you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Father, I thank you that oftentimes we make our own plans, but you direct our steps. And I know that has played out into how our family is formed and what people see on the outside and what we experience on the inside. And so, Father, I pray for that process of trusting you to lead. And I ask that, Father, I ask that your Holy Spirit would direct those steps in choices, in doors to walk through. And Father, I pray for courage. If this is the next step for someone, that they would do it in a courageous, trusting way. And I pray for all the wisdom that it takes to walk out adoption. There's just many moments that Megan and I would find ourselves praying real quick before we go have a conversation with one of the kids. We need lots and lots of wisdom. And so we don't come as experts by any means. We come as people who are on the journey. And it's been critical for us to trust your Spirit to give us wisdom beyond what we've experienced before. And so, Father, I pray that you would be faithful in our lives as we walk this out and in others. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And I'm going to ask you, babe, can you pray for the Lees?
Yes. Dear gracious Father, I thank you so much just for this time that you've allowed us to have. I thank you for the Lees, Lord God, and their story, their testimony, and Lord, for their hearts. I thank you, Lord God, that they're willing and ready to hear your voice and to act accordingly, however that may look. I pray for their family. I pray for the children in it. Lord, as they continue to grow and mature, I pray that their family just grows closer and closer to you, closer to each other. Lord God, I pray for their stories as the children continue to find themselves, Lord God, and identify with you, Lord God, and just as as human beings, Lord. I pray however that would look, if that would be connecting with birth families, Lord God, starting families of their own, Lord. Even right now, I pray that those positive seeds are planted and that you're just preparing the way and you're guiding and directing, and that you're even beginning to speak to them. I pray for provision for the Lees, whatever they need, Lord God. I pray that you would continue to provide as you have. And I even pray for them together as a couple, that you would just continue to strengthen them, that you would, for everything that they pour out, Lord God, I pray that you would fill them back up. And I just pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you guys for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you guys. Thank you to the beauty beards that are out there for tuning in. It's your boy T. Roy.
Chaka.
And it's Chaka. So, customary to our show, we end with a kiss. We don't kiss each other, but
Great, I can kiss him.
Yes, we kiss our significant
You were looking
other.
at me when you said it.
Well, the Bible says to greet your brother with
I think that's First Thessalonians chapter 5. To be quite honest with you,
I just always assumed that was on the cheek.
well.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know.
I don't know.
So here you go, baby. Peace. That was good.
We went so
Cool.
long.
Yes.
Did we? We didn't go short.
Family might have been a little more on the relaxed side.
Yeah.
Because you remember Halloween?
Oh,
We had to church Christmas Halloween parties, and I did go as the devil to the church.
What? Stop playing.
I don't know why my mom
It's
thought
different.
that was okay.
What? I don't get like.
Great.
I don't either.
they have.
I wouldn't
like,
let my kids do it.
No,